Hello and welcome to the preview show edition of the Blue Monday podcast, a 3 times weekly show looking into all things Ipswich Town. I'm your host, Richard Woodward, and I'm delighted to welcome back the brilliant Harry from Bath. Harry, how's it going? It's been a long time.
Great to see you, Rich. Yes, indeed, 2 whole weeks, and we've had the Republic of Ireland international team to keep us entertained for the last fortnight, and that was pretty riveting stuff. May I say at an early stage how utterly luminous you're looking today? Is there any particular reason for this?
I bought this about a year ago and haven't worn it. So that's number one. I had to cut the tag out of it. I think I made a promise to someone, I can't remember who it was, that as soon as Ipswich got their first win, I would mark it in some fashion, literally, on the podcast. So here I am with the brightest thing I could find in homage to our fearless leader Ben Bloom. So this is my Ben Bloom outfit. So I hope everyone watching on YouTube is suitably dazzled. Thank you for picking me up on it, Harry.
Not at all. You look positively radiant. You really do.
Oh, thank you very much. Hopefully it's adding a bit of colour because it's quite cold and wet outside. I'm feeling quite, it's a bit autumnal and seasonal affective disorder now. So very quickly, let's go back to Swansea and, to mark the my bright red jumper. You went to Swansea, didn't you? And
I did indeed.
I will put my hands up. I was called out on the Sunday show for calling game over at 1-0, but I'm going to say inexplicable, but a joyous 3-2 it sounds.
That was good fun. It was a great game, and it was a tonic for everybody, I think, because I think it was pretty much unexpected, and there was a touch of the heroic. I said on the flagship show afterwards, it felt a bit like it reminded me of the Millwall game,
yes,
where they went
swashbuckling,
yeah, it really was, and particularly with that late winner in the 80-odd minute. I mean, it was slightly later in Millwall last season, but it was still, it's that away goals. Being in an away end when you score a late winner is just there's nothing quite like it. There really is. It was terrific, and it was great. As I say, it was listening to Paul on his press conference today. He picked up on the vision and the kind of the 5 seconds in the head that both Freddie and Gwion Edwards have, and you could see that through the game. You could see them working as a combination, and I do feel we've had 2 weeks to kind of reflect on it. I think we definitely got inside the Swansea defence's heads, and we definitely, because of the way our attacking play was so coordinated, we were able to play 10 yards further up the field, I felt, and that then freed up in a way Sears and Chalobah to do their roles more naturally, even though there was a rearguard action in the second half. I just felt we were, in terms of the balance of the team, it just felt a lot better. And Grant Ward needs a lot of credit because Ben picked up on this, actually. I was listening to the Q&A, which is Ben and Dave during the week did a really good Q&A podcast. It's really worth listening to. It was a good chance to reflect. Ward wasn't so advanced. He wasn't so attacking. He was a little bit more restrained and a bit more geometric, whereas Edwards was the one who was he was the one landing all the blows. But it actually really did balance. He was linking play and linking with Giselle and Freddie really, really cleverly. I think Swansea made a mistake. They were too open. They went for it, and they gambled and it rebounded on them. But
we didn't call that one really. We were quite effusive about Graham Potter and his kind of tactical, kind of playing players because of their positional and tactical sense, rather than you are a midfielder, you are a right back. But it sounded from the Sunday show when you guys talked through it, it ended up being a little bit messy at the end, and it was kind of just chuck fast players on and hope they break us down.
It was unbalanced. It was definitely unbalanced. I mean, I think Ben cocks an eyebrow when we talk about this lack of a formation. Every team does have a shape, I guess, but it did look. I couldn't work it out. It was Ben was, I think, sitting sideways on, and I was in with the away fans, and I knew they had a general back three, but after that I had no idea, because they had effectively had 3 wingers on the pitch, and they were just I think it was the formation was, or the plan was just go for it, really. Was the, I think
attack,
yeah, great fun, great fun, and much needed. And to be fair, to give Hurst credit as well for not mucking around with the combination that he came across in the second half against Borough. I think, huge credit for that. And you do wonder, did Potter not actually watch the that second half and realise that we'd found something that clicked.
Yes.
And yeah,
It
anyway,
was an interesting debate as well about Dizelle, and we'll come back at when we talk about us and QPR on Saturday about Dizelle, because there were certainly some really clever passes early. Even in Borough, there was a good one in behind for Knudsen that I don't think he quite got onto, but it felt like Dizelle had maybe a bit more time and space than maybe if they'd known about him he would have been afforded. Was that fair, do you think? Does Dizelle kind of, we'll talk about Nolan as well, who obviously has made way for him, but he's got that one right, hasn't he, Hurst?
I think he has. I mean, it's easy to have a pop at Nolan, but you felt Dizelle in that three with Skuse and Chalobah behind them, he balanced it definitely. He was more of an attacking threat. He was more, and it just, as I say, it just freed up the whole midfield. It was less gummed up in there. There was less ambiguity about it. It could well be. I mean, I think was it I can't remember whether it was you or whether it was Ben talked about the idea that maybe Nolan's true role is as a deeper line playmaker.
That's what Shrewsbury fans said, yeah.
Yes, that's right. So that might be something, it might well be, he's still finding his feet in the club, etc., and at a new level. But that could well be, if we can start to piece things together and build a bit of momentum, that's when you might start to reintroducing him in a slightly deeper role. But we'll see. But it was a great day. It was great, and it was just something to build on, which was fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a good question. Apologies for dipping in and out of different sources, but I've got. I think there was a question about which I quite like to ask about the momentum. I think it's Harry's question. Apologies for being a little bit slow here. It just came to me. How much momentum will the Swansea win give us? Says Harry.
Yeah.
And
with Harry.
And also, I guess my question, which we briefly talked about before we started recording, is this 2-week break, would you have had it ideally, or would you have gone straight into the next game to try and maintain that momentum? Do we kind of have a bit of a lull and need to get ourselves back up for it because of the 2-week break?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The only people who I've come across who have been praising having an international break have been Leeds fans, because I've been working on Leeds for the blog I write for the Wednesday game, and they've welcomed it because they're hoping to get Pablo Hernandez and Kemar Roof back from injury. They've been carrying knocks and they've been without them. So, but generally, other than that, if you've lost a couple of games, you hate it because you've got to then sit and brood and contemplate your sinfulness. Whereas if you win a couple of games, like we had, was it Norwich? We went into the break off the last time.
Yeah,
and
positive.
There was a sense of momentum, a sense of something to build on, and then Hull.
Yes.
But So no, it's it's a strange thing. It really is. It's so staccato the season. This side of Christmas, we've suddenly got this blast of 5 games in 4 weeks or whatever it is, and it just feels so intense. And then suddenly silence for a fortnight. It's so
there's
strange.
another one in November as well.
There is.
Anyway, it's a big week or few coming up, so we'll definitely come back to that at the end.
Yeah. Talking of November, it is so frustrating that Sky, threatened by our emergent presence, saw fit to move the West Brom game onto a Friday night. But not to be outdone, we have come up with an alternative plan. Have we
do.
Not,
yeah, I felt so. We've talked about it before, and I wasn't able to make it, but I know that Ben has put a shed load of work into making this happen, and I was just gutted for Ben more than anything else. I know that there's a lot of people who I'm afraid can't make the date as well that we've announced, which is the 16th of February. So sorry for you guys, and hopefully we'll sort out refunds. But trust Sky to ruin it, eh? But 16th of February. I can make that date, which I'm obviously excited about. So we'll be able to do our kind of preview show and deck kind of routine for everyone on the Saturday after the game, which is Stoke, isn't it? So same details, I think, Eventbrite for the tickets, Twitter and Facebook for more information. Hopefully see the majority of people who are going to make the November date, and hopefully a few more as well.
Yeah, it should be good. And the Stoke game, fingers crossed, will, as I say, they won't see fit to move that. We'll have it should be a good day. I have a couple of mates who are Stoke fans who I'm trying to persuade to come over for it as well. And as we said with the West Brom event that was lined up for the roadshow, meeting up with mates and talking about it has been so often been the highlight of an afternoon. So it'll be really good. when you go along in the evening, it will be good fun. And I know Ben, he's cooking up he's hatching all sorts of plans. So make a date, 16th of February. Can't wait myself. Really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right. Exciting times.
Mm.
Something else to plug very quickly as well is our friends at Turnstile Blues, who have a new
Yeah.
edition of the fanzine out, the 18th issue of their fanzine this weekend, which is dedicated to the Beats,
Yeah.
and definitely something to try and find. They'll be outside the ground. I think they sometimes go to pubs, but I think they're encouraging people to try and find them outside Sir Ralph or at the Sir Ralph
Yeah.
Ramsey statue.
Yeah.
Tributes from the Beat from our friend David Diamond, and also Graham from the Naked Footy Show. Memories from Sir Bob shared, and a really good interview by the sounds of it with Anglia TV's Jerry Harrison, who was the sound of Anglia football for
Wow.
going back into the 80s and
There's a
70s, I
name.
think,
Yeah.
who shares a vast array of stories from his days when he covered the Blues in the glory years. They've also got some stuff on our start to the season under Paul Hurst, and a reminder that other town managers have found things tough when they take their first job. Some observations on Hurst's pre-season comments about Tom Adeyemi, analysis of whether Huddersfield Town's success provides any kind of blueprint for getting promoted. So yeah, it sounds like it'd be great. And I know they've got some guy from Twitter, I forget his initials, H something Z, I think, who's done a really great cover for it. It's only £1. I mean, £1 you can't buy anything with £1 now. So brilliant fanzine. A really great read. So come find the guys at the Sir Ralph Ramsey statue from about 2:15 on Saturday, and enjoy that one. And I think you can get it from eBay as well. But details on their Twitter account. So yeah, give them some support and a good read, hopefully for halftime as well.
Totally agree, Rich. It is. It's one of those. I remember coming back from the Forest game. We'd lost it at the end of last season, and I picked up a copy of Turnstile Blues. And I can't remember. There was an irreverent interview in there, Mick, and I can't remember who it was with, but I was sitting in the service station reading bits out loud to my partner, and she was telling me to stop laughing so loud. It was so funny. It can be delightfully irreverent at times, but also it really chimes so brilliantly with the supporters of the club. So I can't wait to get my copy of it. And for £1, that's ridiculously cheap. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that one. Great. Well.
Yeah.
Looking forward to QPR on Saturday. A real interesting one. A real kind of test of whether the Swansea win was a flash in the pan or is the start of something good. Hopefully it is. QPR, pretty terrible start, culminating in that thumping at West Brom, that 7-1 thumping. In comes two proven strikers on loan in Naki Wells and Tom Ahmed. I don't think their goals necessarily have shifted the balance. I think you were telling me they haven't actually scored that many between them. But suddenly the results started to turn. I think they lost to Bristol City straight after that. But then they've started picking up wins against teams in this kind of, as you call it, this mini relegation league at the bottom of the Championship, which we find ourselves in. So really interestingly poised. They've got a few more wins under their belt than we have. But it'll be an interesting test nevertheless. Where do you want to start with QPR, Harry?
Where do we begin with them? They're interesting. What are they? 18th in the table. Jekyll and Hyde is really the word. There's actually a lovely quote from one of them on Loft for Words. He said, one of the hoops. He said, "This is a season so far which has lurched from moments of great hope to ones of deep concern and despair." They really are.
We know all about the latter, don't we?
Yeah, we do indeed. Yeah, they are a Jekyll and Hyde team. They really are. They don't know which is going to turn up, and it's been a very faltering start to the campaign. They had that wretched August when everybody was, we began to think, because bear in mind they've got a financial fair play constraint on them. What they have now till the end of the season. They can't use the January window. They're working with their existing squad, and they, as you say, an awful start. Then they had wins over Bolton, Millwall, Reading. Managed to Wigan. The Wigan win was huge in late August, but they've managed to pull some good wins together. But then, just as equally, the week before we went to Swansea, they went to Swansea and were thumped 3-0 and badly thumped by all accounts. It was a very poor defeat, and the way they described it had an echo of when we went to Reading at the end of last season. it was that kind of level of confidence within the team. Just before that's their defeat against Swansea. The previous games they'd lost 1-0 at home to Norwich, and then a virtually reserve team went up to Blackpool in the League Cup and was beaten. So they'd had 3 games, 3 straight defeats, no goals, and suddenly the house of cards was beginning to wobble again. They are a very fragile team, and you do feel on a good day they don't know which team is going to turn up. But if the wrong team turns up, and you get into them, and if it goes 2-0, it can very easily go 4, no problem at all. They can't fold. That's 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 one extreme. But then the other extreme was their game just before the international break when they played Frank Lampard's Derby and indeed at Loftus Road. And, they went a goal down and they felt they were in trouble. It was sloppy defending. Leistner, the centre half, let a ball bounce, and Jack Marriott nipped in and and opened the scoring. But they regrouped and came back in the second half. We'll talk about why in a bit. But they then they came back and equalised and took the game to the Rams in the second half. And the fact that they were able to do that psychologically meant a lot to them. They realised that they're not going to be pushovers, and they found a piece of resilience within the squad, which meant a huge amount to them, particularly as 7 days earlier they completely folded at the Liberty. An interesting team. Most of them think fundamentally they've got enough they're better than 6 other teams in the league, I think is their hope. When they look at some of the teams, they came away from Reading and they were scathing about what Reading were like. We're doing them in a few weeks' time, I know, but they were talking about their only tactic was conning set pieces out of the referee. That was literally all they had. But they feel they've enough. They're better than 6 other teams in the league, but they're probably not much better than that. If that makes sense. So that's their expectation to finish. If you gave them 17th, 18th, 15th, 16th, they'd thank you very much and say thank you.
Yes.
Take that.
Same here.
Get this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They've got looking at the goal scorer was Jeff Cameron, wasn't it? Against Frank Lampard's Derby. And there's other kind of really experienced players kind of scattered throughout the team. We've talked about the 2 strikers, but particularly on the back line I'm looking in, and even the wide players as well. It seems that McLaren's kind of going for tried and tested rather than, I think you were saying, rather than kind of going down the Paul Hurst route of gambling on the lower league players. But sometimes these players do make the difference, don't they? And Cameron obviously sounded like he took his goal quite well against Derby.
It's interesting you saying that about McLaren. One of the big things they said about him, he came in, it's a real steady the ship job. We're coming in after Ian Holloway. The signings he made over the summer were Angel Rangel, the experience, and Leistner, who is Tony Leistner, came from Berlin, Union Berlin, a German, from the German league, and he basically 2 very experienced players of a certain level, because they don't have the money to buy high quality players with the constraints that they have, and he set about making the team hard to beat. And then the 2 extra players that he brought in the loan window, Hamed and Wells, you mentioned, but also Cameron. Again, he's gone for experience. That's his model of operating, I think, rather than, whereas you look at Hurst, we've got Tanasian and Ciala, Nolan, all these kind of risky, unproven players, but who could have a real upside. Yeah. McLaren is, he's really playing the percentages with his squad building over the summer. Yeah.
The other thought that I've just had in terms of the results that you brought out there, and McLaren's style potentially to be fairly solid is I wonder that I think they are looking at the relegation games kind of as 6-pointers. We'll put all of our intention to winning those, and the other games, away at Swansea, maybe Bristol City, arguably, we'll just accept defeat in those ones. If we get a draw, great. But we'll beat the teams around us, and those wins might be sufficient. I wonder if there's anything in that. Am I maybe stretching for something there?
You might be stretching a bit. I wouldn't know. I think they will try and get what they can from where they can. Okay. I don't think they'll given how marginal everything is. They're also, but then again, you say that one of their comments about looking ahead to Saturday's game was the fact that the week after they've got 2 home games against Sheffield Wednesday and Aston Villa, and they've almost, the fans, whatever with the players, the fans have almost said, well, if we get 1 point out of those 2, that would be great, as long as we beat Ipswich. Yeah, so you could be right, actually. The more we think about it, I don't think a squad would do that. I can't see, you won't go there, playing the percentages. But
I can just imagine him, both McLaren and
Yeah.
maybe the previous manager looking at the calendar and circling fixtures saying this
Yeah.
one matters, this one not so much. We had Cardiff on a Tuesday night, or
Yeah.
Villa away on a Saturday or whatever. It's if you get something out of this, brilliant. But I'm not going to get excited about it. But this is the one where we need to turn up and win.
Yeah.
We'll see maybe on Saturday.
That generation of managers, we've talked about this before. I know the tournament model. You look at 3 games in a week and treat it like a tournament, and say, well, if we can get 6 points, we get out of the group, or 4 points and we get out of the group, kind of thing. And you could be right, actually. So in which case, he could if he's going to put all his eggs in a basket this week, McLaren, the basket will be taken to Portman Road, I would say. Yeah.
And what formation does that basket look like? I'm trying to spin that.
That's good. That's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a really relevant question, because he did that thing. You bring in 2 strikers, Hamed and Wells, and you try and play them both up front, and it unbalanced the team. It didn't work. If you ask any QPR fan, they will all say to you, you need to have 3 in the middle and one up front to get the right balance, because they haven't got the quality playmakers in midfield to be able to link with the strikers, and they also lack width, which is another big theme which has come out. So therefore, when they had Hamed, they played Hamed and Wells up front at Swansea, and they were completely isolated. You had 2 midfielders who were completely overrun by the Swansea 3 in midfield. They couldn't handle them, and then suddenly they were effectively playing 2 men down, because Swansea just completely overran them. Tactically they were outmaneuvered. I think so. Generally 4 at the back and 3 in midfield, and we'll come on and have a look at the players in a bit. He's gone for a very cautious model of, within that, it's 4-2-3-1, but it's effectively 4-4-1-1, because the back 4, you've got 2 solid centre halves and 2 fullbacks who don't really bomb forward. It's not like Fulham at all. They have been sitters, broadly speaking. They get forward when they can, but that's not their intention. The midfield, as I say, you've got Cameron and you've got Massimo Luongo, who has been a bit lethargic.
Former Town Loney, of course.
Yes, exactly, former Town Loney. But he's been out. He was at the World Cup in Australia, and they feel he hasn't really got his legs back since then. It kind of disrupted He didn't play much, but it was all the training and conditioning in the World Cup has disrupted his pre-season. But effectively, they're this. If you could say Cameron is the excuse role, really, he's the sitter, and Luongo would be more of a box-to-box player. But flanking them on either side, you've got Luke Freeman and you've had Jordan Cousins. Now, both of them are not wingers. They would, again, Freeman, when Holloway was there, was playing in the midfield with Luongo and Scowen, and Cousins has played a lot of his career. I know we were discussing this before, and he can play. He's a right-sided player.
Yes.
But I would see him as a right-sided central midfielder.
Not
but
a bomber on or a...
No, he's not.
Not an out-and-out winger, maybe.
No, he's not a proper winger in that sense. So I just, when I was making my notes for this, I wrote down it's a bit like a poor man's diamond, in that you've got 2 solid central midfielders and 2 wide players who are inclined to come in centrally as well, which was something they picked up on. And when the fullback's not bombing on,
I was about to say,
it's a very static model.
You're not getting much, are you?
No, and 9 goals from 12 games this season, is it tells its own story in a way. There's not much of a threat, an attacking threat, but I think it could be that what Steve is a bit like when Mick came to us, lack of confidence. Let's just get the shape right. Let's just get this thing solid, and let's get through this. Let's get through this season. Seems to be the model that they've been working with. When they've been playing the 4-4-2, they have one really good. They're one playmaker to have, which Paul Hurst referenced today, Eberici Eze. He's his best position is a number 10, but when they played the 4-4-2, he was shunted out to the right, where again he was completely lost. Right. He's just simply not a winger. So he might have vision and creativity, which he does have, but he's not. That's simply not his game at all. And it's the of the 2 strikers, Hamed is more of a line leader. He uses strength and physicality, but he's quite mobile. Whereas Naki Wells, the way they're describing him, is more like a David McGoldrick type character. So he's more geometric and he can find space more cleverly. But neither of them have got a prolific goal-scoring record yet. And I think the hope is with more game time and more minutes together, it will all come together. We'll come into the players in detail, but just the themes that have come out, the lack of confidence we've talked about, the lack of pace in the back four means they have a habit also of sitting quite deep. One of them memorably said, "We're deeper than the Titanic here." Is how he described it against the game against Derby. It's a very solid. They look as if they know what they're doing, but it is slow and they can be turned. The centre halves can be turned. One of them summed it up perfectly in terms of the balance of the team. It's good that we're keeping clean sheets, and it's partly because we sit so deep, but it's also why we're really struggling for goals. So in overall terms, they would be the issues. One of the other reasons they're not scoring many goals, and this again is partly Cameron and Luongo in midfield, they don't have many players who can play. It could be because of the shape of the team. Well, put it more accurately, they're not seeing many killer through balls being played.
I was going to say, where do the goals come from then, Harry?
Yeah,
because I'm looking at this. I've got a picture of the team here, and I'm thinking if you've got fullbacks that don't overlap, if you've got wingers that don't try to get past the man and get a cross in, is it set pieces? Is it shots from range? Is it?
They're being pragmatic. The equaliser against Derby came, I think it was the Scott Carson spilt the ball, and they reacted more quickly. I think Wells reacted more quickly, right. Hooked the ball back to Cameron, who drilled it in 1-1. There you go. That was. I think there isn't a. Whereas with Brentford, you have a model of play in your head, and you know how they're going to score. Really, it's hard to know how. There doesn't seem to be a preferred model within how they're playing. That said, it's a work in progress, and what they did in the Derby game, they made some changes, which are probably worth talking about now. The back four, you've got Rangel, Leistner, Lynch, and Bidwell. That was the starting back four. An established right back, Rangel. He's played over 300 games for Swansea. Bidwell, very experienced ex-former Brentford player. Bidwell went off with ankle ligament damage. He won't be playing on Saturday. Yeah. It's a serious injury. So, and this is where McLaren takes credit. He flipped things around. He could have brought on Alex Baptiste, who has got no pace whatsoever, and dropped him in and did a little rejig. But he was cleverer than that. He swapped Rangel across from right back to left back. He dropped Jordan Cousins back into a right back role, which can be done if you've got a midfielder with a good engine. He can drop in and just use some industry really just to hold the shape. And he brought on Pavel Vyjolek, who's a very lively right winger. It's
a name I'm not familiar with.
No, he's a Poland international. He played for Sampdoria, and then he's like all these players. He was out. I think he was with Verona, but he never played for them. He's one of these he's played one of these European journeymen really. But he transformed the game against Derby because suddenly they had width, they had tempo, they had urgency, and this was after about a half an hour. So I think you might see Vyjolek starting on the right against us, and that's what he does. He's an absolute, just what it says on the tin, right winger, down the flank, into the box. He also wins. They said he's very good at winning 40-60s. He has that about him as well. So he's quite feisty. He gets stuck in. He's not one of these dainty wingers who will just kind of just give me the ball and I'll do something nice with it. He is a proper get stuck in type of player. So which also that helps from the point of view of urgency, and that balanced the team. That certainly gave them a counter threat to Derby, and it was through force of circumstance, but. It seems to have it also then, as I say, it's a bit like when Edwards was doing so well for us at Swansea. Suddenly all the other players were freed up to get further up the field and get more involved. It suddenly gave them a foothold in the game, and they were able to get the equaliser. And they felt that the goal came from a reaction, a set piece that Derby didn't deal with, but they felt the goal was going to come anyway. It was a well-merited draw, and I think even Frank Lampard said the same thing as well. So it's a team that's emerging. Definitely, there's a style of play that's emerging. You couldn't nail it down and say it is. It's a Brentford or it's a Fulham or it's a back in the day a Sam Allardyce. There isn't an absolute model, or Millwall with a rock solid 4-4-2. It's not that, but it's nascent. It's being worked on, but it is coming together.
So what role has Eze got then in that kind of system? Do you see him as a number 10 if they go to a kind of 4-2-3-1 or?
That's he is the best. He's raw but getting there. Derby, they said the compliment they gave him. He's only 20. He's young. I think he came through Fulham and Millwall's youth system, but Paul Hurst clocked him. He mentioned him in his interview today. He was on loan for part of last season at Wickham, so Hurst knows all about him. In a way, this is where Hurst's big advantage is, that he knows, having worked in the lower leagues, he's very streetwise. He knows all these players coming through, so he won't be ambushed by them. Put it that way. He has the knack of winning fouls. He plays with his head up. The thing he doesn't do yet is he's brilliant at bombing forward, but he will then suddenly get a nosebleed and pause. And one of them said, one West Londoner said, he will move on to the next level once he realizes he can beat a player. But he will get there. They feel
he's got that in him, has he?
He has it in him. Yeah, he keeps asking for the ball. He keeps making space for himself. He's hungry. He's not somebody. He certainly won't hide. He will look for space. He will try and find it. And you can see him and Wells, two similar types of players, working well together. But it's one of those things. I remember Marcus Stewart, I may have said this before, saying once at a Southwest supporters evening that the squad that starts the season, even if the players don't change, isn't the squad that finishes the season. It's this thing we talk about, relationships forming and bonds being, the team evolving and taking shape with each game. And you feel that Eze plus Wells could actually become quite an interesting, combination, but not balls in the air. Definitely, it's on the deck. And it's using clever movement and pace, because he is quite quick. Yeah, interesting.
So one of the reasons we're here, I guess, is how we can combat it. Looking at Jules' question we've talked about maybe the lookout players. I think we covered. Is there anyone in reserve, Harry, that you haven't brought out that might get a shot on Saturday?
In terms of scary players, people to be worried about, not really. Tomer Hamed might come off the bench. Again, he works hard, gets into good positions. One of them compared him to Heider Helgason, which is quite high praise, actually.
So physical then.
Yeah, a physical player, broad-shouldered, intelligent, back-to-goal striker, very good in the air. The problem is there's no point in being good in the air if you don't have wingers.
Yes, where's the crosses coming from? Yeah.
So exactly. So in that sense, he gives them a focal point and takes the pressure off the midfield. And in a way, Hamed arriving has really sidelined Matt Smith, there's a name. There's always one player in every squad you think, oh, what's happened to him? Do you remember Matt Smith, who's the old school number 9?
Yes.
Who they diplomatically described as a giant striker with ability issues.
Sounds like me. No, I'm not giant.
Hamed has shown up Smith's lack of mobility. Now Smith came on, they were 1-1, and they had a couple of late set pieces against Derby. So McLaren decided to chuck on Smith on the 93rd minute, just as a free lottery ticket kind of thing near the end.
It's like lobbing Berra up front like we used to do.
Exactly that. Just stick it on. He's basically poor Matt Smith. He doesn't do flick-ons, heading the ball in random directions. He's but he did save them last season. They're very full of praise for what he did last year, because he was the only target man they had. But his lack of mobility, he moves around the pitch slowly. So in terms of up front, I'm not quite sure where the goals are going to come from. I think the goals will be improvised, to be fair. But the one player who might score a goal, we're just cherry picking the players off as we go. Luke Freeman. Anybody who's with West Country connections will have a sinking feeling about Freeman, because he never scored many goals when he was with Bristol City, but he always had a knack of scoring against us. And I remember
Didn't he score an absolute rocket against us?
Yes, it was.
I'm gonna have to find that one.
Heart-sinking goal. It really was at Ashton Gate. We were in the game. It was all kind of we were holding our own, and then suddenly, bang, goal! Up they go. The whole ground erupts, and but they don't trust him. He is probably the most technically gifted player they have. He's very good on set pieces, but one of them diplomatically said, "I wonder at times if he's a team player." There was always a debate with Bristol City fans with him and Lee Tomlin. They were, again, two technically very creative players, but were they primarily, playing for themselves? What were their reference points in terms of everybody else in the team?
You can't have two of those in a team either, can you? Really?
You simply can't. He talks about the fact, is he one of those strikers or footballers who admires his work? They said he never plays the ball first time, always taking a few touches when a first time ball is on. He holds on to it too long. One of them described him as a ball hugger, actually, at one stage. He's that was as bad as it got. But technically, he is incredibly gifted, and I wonder if McLaren thinks putting him on the left gives him more space to operate in.
Yep.
And because that's where he should be, if anywhere. So getting him on the left means he can actually,
Might he drift
yeah, he can
inside?
drift. He can drift inside, exactly
Yeah.
that, and do some damage. But he has got a knack of scoring against us.
And he's the dead ball man, did you say? He's the
He'd
set
be, yeah,
piece.
he'd be the
Yeah.
set piece man they'll use. Yeah. While we're just covering the wingers, there is somebody did ask a question about do we have a
I think,
Peppery
was it Tim?
Tim?
Who
Yes,
is
it was
considered
Tim.
peppery in the
Peppery.
QPR team?
Tim Pashley
Let's
asked
not
the
be
question.
hasty Harry and
Uh,
giving this out too much. This
oh
is the
no, this is
Paul Hollywood handshake on the
it's
on
a
the podcast. We don't want to give him out too much and
no
demean
this
the
no.
benefit. You know the
It's a solemn
status.
moment. It's a
Exactly
very
right. There's a
solemn moment.
status to this word.
There is one actually. He's an absolute bench option. Ex Blackpool, 20-year-old, bright as say Samuel. He's the very definition of peppery. A player with lightning pace and drive. Very much a substitute. You wouldn't put him on to start with. He adds pace and purpose. He terrorizes fullbacks with his pace, goals and threat when he's on form.
When dot dot
Dot
dot
dot
when.
dot. Yeah, but he does. He likes to drive a man in a one-on-one. He goes. He just goes for it. And he attacks the byline. He's one of these. Right, I'm off. I remember Ryan Fraser when I first saw him playing for us. He was brilliant at that. You suddenly he gets the ball and you just think, right, there's the goal. I'm off, lads. I'll see you later. And he's just tearing off the field with the ball, and you can see all the players going, oh, hang on.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've got to catch up with that.
exactly. Brilliant when you see it happen. It really is. But say Samuel, he is very much for 10 or 20 minutes though. They think he's
Yeah.
just you wouldn't start him. He's not there yet. He can be very frustrating.
There
But
you go, Tim.
that's the kind of that's the attacking end of things. Looking at the midfield, it's worth looking at the balance there because it has been problematic for them. Cameron was another August addition they brought in. They like him. He's the USA international. He's come on loan from Stoke, season long. Basically, Stoke don't need him, and this season breaks up play well, screens the defence, and uses the ball intelligently. So he's a kind of a focal point in midfield. And you can see again after the 7-1 against West Brom why McLaren would want a player like this in the team.
Yeah.
Someone who will just he's kind of a
Solid and steady. Yeah.
exactly. He's a good sentry. He pops up well where needed, but there is an issue with his fitness. This has come up from several of them. He looks spent after an hour, grave reservations, and he can end up as a consequence dropping too deep. And if he drops deep, then the whole he can pull the whole team back. He does read the game very well though, but he's not somebody. He tends to. One of them commented about the fact that he operates in a very small area in front of the penalty area, and that's you won't get him to move much further than
Right.
that. He's a sitter in every sense of the
The
word.
US didn't have an international fixture, did they, this week or last week?
I'm not sure he was even.
Last time we had Eric Lehigh, didn't we, for Hull?
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Who was lost in the airport or something like that.
Stuck in Terminal 3 in Dallas or somewhere. No, I don't know if he was. I don't know if he was. I don't think he's. I'd say he may have drifted out of the reckoning now for all of his experience. We'll double check. If we're wrong, we'll pick that up. But I don't think he wasn't away this time. His partner, as I say, Massimo Luongo. There is an issue with his anonymity. It could be, but him and Cameron together. I think the idea is that Luongo was the box-to-box player, but he's very much one of them described him as the water carrier. He's the one to link play forward, but his tackling and tracking back have been poor. They've been saying he seems to lack urgency, and urgency is a big part of his game. In fact, that's a it's something he's normally quite an industrious player, but very pedestrian, playing in lead boots was how somebody described it.
Just to go back in time a little bit on Luongo,
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on whether you thought he was hard done by because he was on loan and Jules signed him on loan. We struggled at the start of the season, down the bottom. Mick comes in, and I think Mick chose to spare him a relegation dogfight, or perhaps didn't think he was ready for it. Any thoughts on that? I thought he was he looked quite impressive and quite a good attacking midfield option for us when he was on loan. I was a bit disappointed that maybe he ended up going back to Spurs. Don't know what you think. Whether you think he made the right call there, Mick, or
Well, it's a good question. It's he would have been. He's 26 now, so he would have been very young at the time. He was very raw. I guess I remember once pulling together just a squad picture. You always look at things in balance to say, well, what really went wrong? What really went wrong when Paul Jewell left?
what had gone right would probably been easier.
And I was one of the things you look at was what was the balance of the squad like? And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, we were kind of running with Indaw and Hyam at the time. And apart from Luongo, there wasn't much else. And it could well be that he felt that in Dawnheim, well, there wasn't a lot of creativity there, and they were really sitting and protecting basically, it's a bit like what McLaren did, only more extreme. Just get the thing, get some shape, get the thing organised, get some tightness around it. And in that sense, Luongo could have been a luxury. And as you say, chucking him into a team that really, it didn't, I mean, that team was so bad.
Yes.
It was so bad. It wouldn't have been fair on him. I mean, even Luke Heim, I think, is always. I never think he's been given the credit for what he did that season in helping hold that. He played a huge role for somebody with such little experience in holding that team together. That's a small side point, but I think in that sense, Luongo would have been. I think he would have disappeared. At least Heim had some steel. Heim had a. I don't know. There's something about Jaime. There was a never say die spirit about him, and he would have. He was.
I guess we were never going to be passing through the midfield under Mick anyway, were we?
No,
we were going to be direct, and we were going to lob balls up to the front men. But it was just an interesting aside. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. It'd be interesting. It's one to get people's thoughts on actually, because that. Because he never really, he's not. You talk about players like Gio. You think about some of the great lone players we had, and people get emotional. And Luongo, in a way, he just drifted through really. But I think he was. But remember what our transfer strategy was like at the time. There was that.
I don't think there was one. Was there?
Exactly. Sort of
darts on a board. I think it was
a slightly chaotic addition. I think more than anything else. Yeah. The other side player that was worth mentioning who might feature. I don't know if he will though. Is Josh Scowen, who was very much part of the setup last year in midfield. Very a decent industrious player, but he's technically not brilliant, and he can slow whatever about Luongo and Cameron. He can end up slowing the play down because he's very sloppy with his touch and passing. So again, somebody who can disrupt the kind of tempo of the team really. So but he has been used as a bench option. He's the former Barnsley player who you remember. Yeah, so he's in that team that got broken up. So you've got him. Looking at the back line. Can we talk about Joe Lumley, the goalkeeper? Is that okay?
Yeah, he's another youth player, is he?
He is, yeah. I don't think when the poor Aston Villa goalkeeper came down, we were able to give him a warm Suffolk welcome. I don't think we're going to have the same joy with Lumley. He's only 23 and he's a youth product. They rate him. They really do. They like his size. He's particularly good at distribution, both with the ball. With feet and with his throws. They describe his hands as being like magnets, no matter how hard the shot is. And there have been a couple of times he's been praised for shots which have swerved and which have done weird things. He's got really good agility and his reactions are fantastic.
Wow, high praise.
High praise, and it's very. For all of this saying about McLaren playing it safe with experienced players, he's obviously looked at them and thought, no, this guy can hack it. And they've said that with a run of games which he has had, he's a regular in the team. Did he even play? I think he did. No, he didn't play in the. I was just double checking. He didn't play in the EFL Cup match. He was rested for that, but he's a player who is, as he's had more games, he's really grown into the role, and they have a lot of time for him. So he's a big tick really. So I don't think we'll see. He could have a big rick in him tomorrow. You never know. But he hasn't so far. He's been pretty consistent. The centre backs Leisner and Tony Leisner we've mentioned, and Joel Lynch.
Lynch has been around for a while, hasn't he?
He's 30 now. For ex-Forest and Huddersfield, Union Berlin, as I say, Leisner came from. A little touchy Bolton about these, which made me kind of the name. We have a pacey striker whose name occurred to me as a bench option, definitely if we don't start him. Jackson's surely worth a run out of these two if we're struggling.
Oh, Sears isn't any slouch though, is he?
That's true. That came up in the. That's a really good point actually, because that came up in the press conference with Hurst today. He's not known for his out and out pace, but again, it was the 5 seconds in the head thing. If you know, yeah. So that's a good point actually. I was thinking Caden Jackson in the way he got at Bolton. I wondered with these two, Leistner and Lynch, because again, they're both slow. They're not footballing centre backs. Leistner, big ugly centre back who will smash into people and head the ball.
Classic Championship.
Absolutely, well, you've come to the right league, mate. A calm head at the back. He doesn't have any great pace. Steady defender, so he's somebody who's a good organizer. And Joe Lynch is this isn't good. He's gone from being a terrible Championship defender to an average Championship defender. And again, he's one of these. They say when he concentrates on doing the simple things well, heading, kicking, and doing the basics, he's fine. He wins crucial headers, and he has got a decent forward pass. But apparently, they were talking about he has these Beckenbauer moments every so often, and he really shouldn't have them.
Or like Emmanuel Petit moment, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Head down, running with the ball.
Off you go, a moment of glory. Who was the guy? Was it Hefele? Or the guy who played for Huddersfield, and he was like a party trick. Yeah, I think he helped them get promoted. The Hef he was known as, and he would do this 2 or 3 times in the game, and Huddersfield fans knew all about it. The game was a bit boring. It was a 30-0 draw against, I don't know, Wigan or Preston. There was nothing happening. It was cold Tuesday night. Hef would get the ball in the back and say, "Right, lads, I'm off." And he would literally, what we were saying earlier about the wingers, he would just go off on a kamikaze run up the field, and of course the whole crowd would be up on their feet then, thinking, "Right, okay, here we go, moment of destiny."
Another player who was quite good at that. This came up because I was going through some old footage for a side project. That people might see the light of day at some point. Titus Bramwell used to do that. I was watching in the first season of the Premier League, 2000-2001. Bramwell picks the ball up and basically battering rams his way through the entire Coventry midfield. He comes up against Paul Williams, who is no slight man. He is a big unit as well, and they both bounce into each other, and you could feel like suddenly they had their own gravitational field. The kind of everything sucked towards them. It was pretty impressive, and I think Paul Williams got a free kick out of it, so that was quite a good one as well. But Bramwell did that against Sunderland a few times, I remember. Torpedo Moscow at home, I think he did another as well. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted.
It's fantastic. It's funny the things you remember from games that aren't necessarily goals.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There'll be these things that you come away and you think, "Oh God, you remember he did that?" And it wasn't that he scored a great winner or he scored a kind of routine a goal on the 50th minute or whatever. It was the fact, something utterly bizarre happening.
Gets the crowd up for it or something, doesn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah. But as I say, Lynch's problem is I think he's at that stage of a centre half where he's beginning to what pace he has is going, and they talked about the fact regularly that he can be turned very easily by a nippy forward. So in a way, Freddie could be, Freddie, often strikers can mark defenders, if you know what I mean. They can choose the defender they try and get onto, and if Freddie was able to do that up against someone like Lynch, I think he could have some joy, definitely. As I say, Alex Baptiste is the plan B, but his lack of pace does scare them. And the other 2 players we haven't mentioned are the fullbacks. Angel Rangel, he got a huge ovation.
You've got to love a player with a rhyming couplet for a name, haven't you?
Fantastic. He's talking about. I heard the discussion with Ben and Dave about is Chambers is he Hall of Fame folk hero? Would he make one of the great teams? And Rangel, in a way, is for us, or for Swansea, what Chambers is for us. I think he's somebody who we will eternally love. But Rangel, he's 35 now, so obviously he was surplus to their requirements, so they let him go. And I think he's on a short-term contract there. And he's, this is why McLaren brought him in. He's a total professional, a calming influence. He has so much Premier League experience, though. This is, tremendous defensive attributes, although other fullbacks are better going forward. He's a solid defender, basically, and he's not, he won't, he's not going to do a Sessegnon, let's just say. He's going to, he'll keep the shape
but
right.
versatile if he can play both sides, though, which is
exactly. And
they can't sign any players.
Absolute bonus for them, it really was. And then Jordan Cousins, talking about versatile, the great phrase, they always say he's a midfielder with a great engine on him, as I say, and he did a really good job at right back. Mind you, when you had Vazolek, he had Vazolek playing ahead of him against Derby, who was causing all sorts of chaos at the other end. So in a way, that gave, I think they did work as quite a good combination, but primarily he was defensive in the Derby game, but he was dogged and determined was how they described him. He's quick, he's tenacious, so he's good in that sense, but in a way he could be a good fullback. The thing they said about him, though, as a midfielder was that his player awareness and distribution are not great. But as a fullback, that may not be such an issue in that what you're trying to do is actually just link with your winger or link with the midfielder. So it may not be, I don't know what his crossing is like. That there was no discussion of that because I don't think that's the role he was playing against Derby. But he could well slot in a fullback, right back on Saturday.
This
but
is
again,
I'm gonna out myself as a Football Manager nerd here. But for those of you who were looking for right backs about 5 years ago in Football Manager, whatever it was, 2012, Jordan Cuz at Charlton was always a really good cheap right back option. So that's where I know him from. So I'm a bit surprised to see him further up the field. I guess not too surprised, but he can play right back from Football Manager, which is very scientific.
He has that experience. I heard one mad thing on talking about Football Manager. A friend of mine, John, he bought it was something like FIFA 2004 or whatever the game was called in those days, and he decided to set up a Bristol Rovers team. But what he then did was he went around all of the European teams when you had players like Messi and Ronaldo, and they were all 16 and worth absolutely nothing. And he brought them all to Bristol Rovers, and he created this team with all of these household names. And I don't know how the algorithms worked, but he basically they did have a series of promotions, which you generally tend to have anyway in these games. But it was absolutely hilarious. It was a really clever way of doing it. You don't know whether they had multipliers for their ability as they go through the years, but he used to say he literally trolled around, and he was picking up. I think he had. Who was definitely there was definitely Messi, definitely Ronaldo. He had Royce from Borussia Dortmund. These players would have been 16 and 17 at the time, and would have cost him half nothing because the computer would have let him buy them. And he created this absolute wonder team. Anyway, sorry.
I was hoping they'd turn out to be duffers, but
no, they weren't. No, they weren't. They went on a play. It was a blaze of. It just was such a clever way of playing the game. I've never heard it. I mean, I've heard friends who've done that. I've friends who've taken over Norwich and basically trashed the team.
That's a different kind of time wasting, that is, isn't it?
It's absolutely. It's really sad.
Very
really,
petty.
When you think about it, yeah. Anyway, but sorry, we've gone off on a mad tangent there. But that's pretty much that's pretty much all they have to throw at us in terms of looking just tying together QPR. As I say, a solid forward the back, three in midfield, a potential threat with Vizolek and Eze, Hemed off the bench probably, Naki Wells up front with sort of his clever movement. And given how we wrote a look against Swansea, and we did sort of more or less keep them out, apart from that one moment in the second half, you would have thought that there's grounds for optimism, that there's nothing there that surely there's nothing there that we can't handle.
We've been there before, though, haven't we, Harry?
I know.
That was brilliant. Can we have a quick pause on Steve, if we may? Is there any words on McLaren? He was linked with us pretty early on. I think the bookies were quite strong on him for Ipswich manager. I've always taken the opinion that he's probably a pretty decent first team coach. Maybe less so a football manager in the kind of Mick mould, but maybe he's figuring that out at QPR. But are they bought into the McLaren way of doing things at QPR?
I think it's more along the lines of who else in their right mind would take this job on. It's more that than anything else. There's no great affection for him. They respect and admire what he's doing. They don't trust a word he says after a defeat, by the way. So, like Mick, the one good thing about Mick was if it was a pig, he called it a pig. If it was an absolute dire game of football, Mick was the first man in the world to hold his hands up and say, "I'm sorry, we stank today." In his own way, he'd phrase it. But McLaren will dress things up. Was it after the West Brom game? I think he said it.
He's like, "No, we were good in patches against West Brom." What was the score against, Steve? Oh, 7-1. Okay, we were good when it was 1.
Yeah. They feel, I don't know, he's no great tactician. I think that the 4-2-3-1 shape they've come across was mainly through accident. I think Hemed had to go off injured, so they had to then switch to one up front and a rejig, which landed them where they are. Though the coaching side might then come through if you see the combination starting to form. As I say, if you see Vizolek, Eze, Naki Wells, Freeman, if he starts to blend an attacking dimension to the team, because defensively there's the issue is the 9 goals in 12 games. That's the problem they've got. But the jury's out with him at the moment. But their view as well is he's taken on an absolutely a job where you've got a makeshift squad. You can't bring any players in. This, who else can we get in? They did mention Mick, actually. We do, that has come up, but that was in August.
Just down the road.
Yeah, indeed, yeah, that's true. That was an August conversation they had, but it's the praise, the typical no nonsense manager. But others were saying, we've just got rid of Holloway for McLaren, getting rid of McLaren for McCarthy. Is that really an upgrade? But that discussion has died down, really. That was an August conversation. I think when they were genuinely frightened after the start that they'd had. But that's all settled down. They genuinely think they can get to 6th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 6th from bottom in the table and just put this season to bed and then see where they go next year when they're out of the financial fair play sort of out of the shackles of that.
Yeah. At least they're realistic then. That's.
Oh, they are. Yeah.
The Loft for Words website as well, brilliant, isn't it? Anyone looking for a pre-match or post-match after the game, those guys do a really good, quite balanced write-up, don't they? So
yeah. Clive Whittingham, he's brilliant. He's really, really good. Certainly the match report will be well worth reading. Clive Whittingham has got a phenomenal turn of phrase. He really does. And he's even if it's a game that doesn't involve your teams, you go on and you enjoy reading them because he can be. Yeah, he's very, very funny. Very, very funny.
One final thing to say on QPR as well is look out for their away kit, which is not too dissimilar to the shade that I'm wearing this evening. I've just realised. So if we, hopefully I'll jinx it. I don't know, but nice bright pink. So do bring your sunglasses to Portman Road on Saturday. Jules, I think we've covered your question about. Tell us about QPR, and I think a little bit about how we can. Not combat them, but at least take the game to them. Josh asks, do you think we'll be unchanged from the Swansea game, Harry?
You don't touch it. Just don't touch it. I think as he's learned from Middlesbrough, second half of Middlesbrough, he's found a balance that works. Just go with it. Injuries and illnesses. Allowing for those, they're the only changes I would make, because there was discussion about another elusive player has picked up a training ground knock, and then there was Chambers. Phil ran the story on TWTD that Chambers has he's got some sort of a bug of some sort of a virus or antibiotics. So he's picked up something anyway. So, but that apart, don't touch it. It's working. And particularly against a team like Queen's Park Rangers, they're not, there's no reason why you would want to change it. You've got a good attacking balance to the team. They're not going, we're not going to be, it won't be like Leeds on Wednesday. We're not going to be weathering a storm, I would have thought. So therefore we can play on the front foot a bit more.
Yep. Hopefully, I'd agree with that. And that means Dizelle plays again, which is also good as well. And we haven't had too many questions. That's partly my fault for putting the tweet out so late. Not too many questions on us or QPR. I guess more about what's coming ahead and whether the Swansea game was a one-off. Quite a few questions along this kind of vein about from James Mealing about 5 games before the next international break. What can be considered a decent points tally? Trying to think of the games we've got. Obviously Leeds Wednesday, then Millwall, Preston. I think we've already said that there are winnable games coming up. So
Reading as well is in that mix. No, it's a huge month. I think Dave said it in the Q&A podcast earlier. This is a huge game on Saturday. I've no doubts it is an absolutely massive game. But I'd also say it's a massive week. Maybe Leeds, we'll see, but Millwall next weekend as well. I think not just how we play, but how we do. I think more widely. I mean, I came away from the Middlesbrough game really, really worried. And Swansea gave us a bridgehead. And I think it's vital that we do push on. It's what would I think? I would hope. I mean, in terms of results, you'd hope for 2 wins out of that group of games. Possibly 8 points would be, but that's what I'd be thinking of anyway. Allow for maybe a bonus point here or a draw in a game you might expect to win. But 8 points from that group of, what is it, 5 games or whatever, that gets us more or less up to points parity. I know Ben loves the statistical model, looking at the points per game. How does it mirror forward for the season? That then gets us competitive, and it stops us looking over our shoulder. A small side point I'd make is the fact that Hurst, the win against Swansea, the nearest parallel I can get was a big win they had away to Millwall in early in Hurst's time in Shrewsbury. Now, again, he took on a team that was an absolute mess. He didn't have a window to do anything with it. But it was very much. It suddenly gave him a glimpse of what was achievable, and it got him and then they picked up a few more results off the back of that. It gave them some momentum. Millwall at the time were doing really well. It was but the team played, it was a feisty, combative game, and they matched Millwall blow for blow. And that got them to the January window, and at the January window, then he brought in a number of strikers. That's when Inciala came in, but he also brought in Freddie Ladapo, who was the guy from on loan from Crystal Palace, and he clicked and he won. He scored 4 in 6 games, I think it was, and they went on a bit of a winning run. It got them safe. It got them up to kind of 15th, 16th in League One, and then they started to cause problems for teams like Scunthorpe and some of the teams who were at the top of League One, and they started blooding a few of their noses. So even though they were in a low position, teams really didn't look forward to playing them, and I think that's Hurst's game plan. That's the best way I can put it.
Got to hope for that.
Yeah. That's the thinking anyway. But so hopefully Swansea was that bridgehead. That was his Millwall moment, in the sense that he was able to show, right, okay, we've got something here now. Let's get into that little cohort of teams away from the bottom 3, and then he can use January then to make whatever that next move forward was, because he did that. He steadily built over all the different windows, and he wasn't afraid to augment the squad. And of course, that's assuming Marcus and him can agree what's needed. But fingers crossed on that anyway. But that's we'll see. But in that context, building on Swansea is absolutely vital. It really is.
It is, yeah. We've already talked about the kind of mini relegation league that's at the bottom, and our friend Ben asks us how many out of these teams will finish outside of the bottom 5. Lists Hull, Reading, Rotherham, Bolton, and Ipswich. So yeah.
God. Reading are, every team who have looked at when they've played Reading have eviscerated them. They really have. But but then Brentford fans were saying they picked up a draw. They picked up a draw. No, it was
Was it Villa?
It was QPR fans were saying that they picked up a draw at Brentford. Reading did, and they just couldn't work. How what? Well, it's the Championship, isn't it? I don't know. Rotherham are, bless them, they're 1-0ing their way.
They're good at home, aren't they?
They're good at home. They're picking up points there. Reading and Rotherham would be the two I'd most fear. Hull have got some quality, but then they don't sit. But they're bottom of the table. I don't know what was your take on Hull, looking back at them now?
I was just sat there thinking these lot are rubbish and we're losing to them. That was my thinking. I think that they got lucky because we were so bad that day, rather than anything else. But they've now started to sneak results here and there, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's tough, isn't it? I mean, they're all much of a muchness down there. There was always there's each of them have got something, this kind of fatal flaw, or are still figuring things out, or you've got transfer embargoes, or you've got injury crises. No one has got a perfect situation at the moment, and I'm looking at those 5 that he's mentioned, and who can do something about their situation, or whose situation's going to get worse. I'm thinking Bolton's situation might get worse. Hull's situation might get worse. I'm not sure what Reading can do about their predicament. Rotherham seem to be quite steady and might just do about enough. And you've got to hope we are starting to build towards something. We'll find out on Saturday. But that would be my thought. Hull, Reading, Bolton. I think it's tough.
It's an interesting question, and it mirrors what Queens Park Rangers were saying. They were saying we need to be. One of the great quotes they said was, "We need to be." Where was it? He said, "We riding our luck and beating poor teams by being slightly less poor than them," which I thought was a good way of putting it. And to some degree, that's we're in that world.
Championship
as well.
survival in a nutshell, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is with us, there is an upside. There's a genuine upside when you compare it to some of these teams. Some of them you're thinking, well, for Reading it's pretty bleak. Rotherham are at the limit of their ability. Hull they seem to be just a collection of individuals. You think we do have enough of an upside to give us hope.
He's not mentioned Preston, but I think we're fairly confident that Preston are gonna. Now
Yeah,
they've
no,
got a
Preston.
win now.
I had a very early look at Millwall. I don't think Preston and Millwall will be. I think Millwall had a quiet start last year, and then they once they got their team clicking, then they pushed away from near the bottom. And I think Preston as well. That 4-0 win they had against Wigan was almost right. Right, enough of this nonsense. Let's get on and start winning some games.
Yeah, we've given you a head start now.
Yeah,
there's a PS from Ben, which I'll merge in from our friend Mikey as well. PS, what are you both doing on February the 16th? And then Mikey, our friend Mikey Smith, also says, is the Curve Bar a suitable place to take a loved one on a Valentine's weekend date? And then he's given us some options: strongly agree, or don't know. I'd suggest the Curve Bar on the 16th of February is a very nice place to take anyone.
Strongly agree.
Maybe
no
a good Christmas present option, perhaps. Bring the whole family.
I would have thought that too. I mean, it's good. With the person you love most, they want you to be happy. So if you're going to be happy at the Curve Bar on a Valentine's evening, well, I can't see a problem with that at all.
Yeah,
I think then exactly then happiness abounds. So yeah, I totally agree. Good question.
They are good questions. Definitely not compelled to read those out. One final question, hopefully to end on a kind of a happy note or a happier note from what we were just talking about. From Ipswich Town, home and away. What is your favourite moment / goal from this season so far? And do you think playing at home has brought us a huge advantage? Let's start with the favourite moment / goal. Presumably Swansea might be up there for you.
Well, it's the winning goal again. It shone out like a shaft of gold when all around was darkness. It really did. If I can put it like that, it was a fantastic moment. No, it was it was great to be hugging people after a late goal. In a singularly bleak season so far. That's the one I would go for. Though the equaliser against Brentford wasn't a bad. That's a good second place call, because again you could suddenly see, hang on, there's something about us, and there was probably more quality in the Brentford goal than there would have been in the Swansea goal. Not that I'm saying anything against the Swansea goal, because that was what the goal at the Liberty represented. So that's for me. Where are you on it?
I will use the point on hugging for Gwion Edwards' goal against Norwich in the North Stand Lower. I was that day in the lovely sunshine, and for a moment, one glorious moment, we were beating Norwich at home.
Hang on.
It might have been deflected, but I was definitely hugging strangers. And my brother-in-law, who's a Col U fan, who was not particularly as excited as I was. So that's his own fault for coming. And home advantage, do you think there's much in that?
Well, it used to be. I've always believed that under the lights we should have still played. I always say we should have played that playoff game against Norwich as an evening game under the floodlights, because it's worth a goal. Those lights are worth a goal to us.
It's a long way to come, isn't it? I think that might be a factor.
It does make a difference. It's a proper theatrical ground. I love Portman Road. I absolutely love it. It's a proper theatrical ground. As I say, Swansea's ground was lovely when I was there. First time I'd been, it was proportional. It wasn't overbuilt. It wasn't over plasticized the way the Medeski is, but it still lacked. It just lacked personality. Whereas Ipswich, you've got the old sign up along the wall. It just echoes. It just has a proper echo of history about it. No, it's I think it could be, and again, doubling up on the QPR thing, a win against a win on Saturday against them would be absolutely fantastic. To get that whole momentum going as well, and I think home fans as well getting behind the team it does really augment it. They'll see, right, we can all, the whole town can see it's on now. We've got a project up and running. Let's just do a minute or so on Leeds, because both of us will be at Leeds. So if you find us at Ellen Road, do come and say hello. If you're of the Ipswich persuasion, obviously. Tough game, isn't it? It will be. It's fascinating. I've been doing a bit of work on Marcelo Bielsa, the manager. He's an absolute one-off. I'll leave just a couple of mad thoughts. I mean, great managers. I mean, Trapattoni's great line, which summed up much of Italian football, was, "If you cannot win, it is important not to lose." That was his great line, which I absolutely adored. And particularly when he was managing Ireland. But Bielsa has another one of these absolutely profound comments. I mean, Bobby has his great one about what is a club, but this is Bielsa's. The possible we already have. What we are doing the impossible. That's how we put it, which is quite fantastic. And they did say it was. This was from Jonathan Wilson's great book on Argentinian football. He says all of Bielsa's teams are doomed to follow the same. Just get this right. He follow the same pattern, spreading at first bewilderment, then enlightenment, and finally exhaustion.
Oh, so exhaustion was that. It sounds like he runs them into the ground. So that
it just run them into the ground. It's mad.
And then depression.
Yeah, exactly. After that, So, but Leeds, no, it's surely it's their year. No, some of the stuff. I mean, it's quite amazing. When the sheer intensity, not just physical but mental. They talked about it's a bit like Bournemouth with all of the coordinated movements, the patterns that they learn. They talked at one stage about, on a Friday before a game, Fernando Llorente, I think, was saying this in one comment. He talked about 120 different attacking and defensive situations they would go through on the Friday before a weekend game, and that's 120 of each that they would look at. I mean, your brain must be cooked playing into that system, but he does. But they say about him that at first he's tough, but by the end of it, you realise he's an absolute genius, and players love him for that. He's so utterly driven. So as I say, it'll be interesting. As I say, Rich and I next week's Millwall show, we'll have a proper look back and see how much of this madness was made manifest on the field.
Well, hopefully we'll figure out a way to give them 123 attacking things to think about. Well, who knows? Yeah. Harry, that was fantastic on QPR as always. Really fantastic piece of work there. Give us a few plugs for your blog and your Twitter.
Yes, Friday lunchtime, the QPR notes will go up on TWTD, and you can then find them. I will link them, as I link everything I put up, on at Harry from Bath. And you mentioned Loft for Words. I've done Clive asked me to do a preview. I've been at large about Ipswich on Loft for Words, and I'll link that as well on my Twitter feed as well. I've done a how the world is from a town point of view. So as I say, yes, that was a bit of fun to do as well.
Fantastic. You can follow me at Ipswich. And the channel at Blue Monday ITFC on Twitter. Don't forget about Turnstile Blues on Saturday and our live podcast on the 16th of February as well. Harry, I will see you on Wednesday night in the cold north, hopefully with a win under our belts from Saturday.
Fingers crossed. Brilliant. Have a great weekend, everyone.